Okay, guys, so today we're going to talk about a different element in interpersonal communication, that is, perceptions, what we see in this world. Let's say if we were in the same classroom right now, I'm pretty sure that even though we are in the same environment, surrounded by the same things, but our perceptions could be very different. What I see could be possibly very different from what you see. So today let's take a look why our perceptions could be different. So why perceptions can differ so much from person to person? Well, the world is the way it is. It is quite objective, but we have our own perspectives. We have our own thoughts and views when we perceive this world. So while the information seems to enter into our conscious minds without bias, our perceptions are not an objective lens. So, in other words, the information can be distorted through our minds. So, for today's class, we're going to look at how information goes through several stages of perceptions, which is selection, organization, and interpretation of the information. So for this lecture, we're going to look at these three stages one by one. So the first stage or the first step of perception is information selection. Well, first, perceptions begin when we select information to pay attention to. Well, in this world, in our environment, there are too many stuff around us. We cannot pay attention to every single piece of information in this environment. So we got to devote our limited attention to only a portion of information, to part of this world. So, which means that it is inevitable that we are gonna ignore some information in this world. So, in other words, selection makes the perception as an incomplete version of the reality. So, by definition, selection involves focusing our attention on some certain sights, tastes, or touches. So here is one more question for you guys to consider. What kind of things tend to draw our attention? Or what kind of things we tend to notice in the reality? Well, research showed that the first thing we tend to pay attention to is something salient, something which stands out. The second thing which tends to draw our attention is something relevant with us. We all got the similar experience. Let's say we are dining in a restaurant, and this restaurant is really noisy. We can barely hear clearly what other people are talking about. But let's say if someone is calling your name, this will immediately catch your attention because this is something relevant with you. This is something which is supposed to be important to you. So that is the second thing we tend to pay attention to, something relevant with us, something important to us. The third one, abnormal stuff. We tend to pay attention to something which is out of our expectation, which goes beyond our expectation, something strange. Usually, you know what, during a lecture, when I feel like my students are feeling really kind of sleepy, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna curse. I'm gonna sing and I'm gonna dance because this will immediately awake my students and, make them sober. Because it is something strange, something kind of abnormal. My students wouldn't expect me to dance in a class, but if I dance, this will immediately catch their attention. The last one is something good looking. We all want to please our eyes, so we tend to pay attention to something attractive. something good looking. So these are the 4 things which tend to draw our attention. And these 4 things will be on the exam for sure. So please make a note here. So we tend to pay attention to things which are salient, relevant with us, abnormal, and attractive. So regarding this last one, attractive stuff, let me do a small experiment here. So in next slide, I'm going to show you guys a picture for just 1 second. So tell me what you observe in this picture. Okay, ready? Go. What did you say? Well, some of you say there are a number of hot guys in the picture. That's the first thing which caught my attention when I saw this picture. But how many of you noticed actually there are several dogs in this photo? So let's take another look of this picture. And actually, there are 2 cute dogs in this picture, but I have to admit, all these guys are really attractive and really hot. So actually, this is a kind of a perception challenge for the dog. So there are some typical comments by people taking this test. They even question it. Is there a dog in this picture? And apparently there is a gender difference in terms of, how much time it took them to find the dog. Men seem to be better at this task than women. So it takes about 1.4 seconds to men to identify the dog, whereas it took women around 4 seconds to finally spot the dog. So this is a really kind of just a fun activity I want to entertain you guys. But my point is, well, the perception begins with selection, and the selection would make us to focus on only a portion of the information in this world. So it's an incomplete version of the reality. So let's move on to the second phase of perception, which is organization. So after we selectively pay attention to some information in this environment, the information enters into our sights. And the next step we are going to do is to organize this information. That is the second step of perceptions. So what specific things we are doing during this organization phase? Well, it involves structuring the information we have selected into a coherent pattern in our mind. This may sound a little bit abstract, but when I talk about specific ways for us to organize the information, you guys will have a much more concrete and better understanding of this organization. So in general, there are 3 ways for us to organize information: by rules, by schema, or schemata. Schema is the plural form of schemata, and last one is by script. So let's take a look of the first one, by rules. There are several specific rules we follow to organize this information. Let's take a look. The first one is something called punctuation. That is, we structure the selected information into a chronological sequence that matches how you experienced the order of events. So if I ask you guys, what did you do today? I guess most of you would describe the things, the activities you have done today in a time order. So I guess probably you will start from the first thing you did after getting up. I guess it's cooking the breakfast, go to the restroom, taking a shower, etc. And then, I don't know, probably what's the next activity? Probably browsing your social media, browsing your Facebook, Instagram, or checking with your families, etc. And then probably taking class, doing your assignment. So if not all of you, but I would say most of you would describe the activities in a time order. And this is one way for us to structure, to organize information following a time order. And here I want to talk about a movie, Memento. This is a really old movie. I think probably it is older than some of you guys. I think it was shot and released in 1994. So if some of you have seen this movie before, you would say this movie is really hard to follow, hard to understand. I think one reason is that the story in this movie was not told in a correct time order. It is in a reversed or a totally messy time order. So we found it's really hard to follow. It is because the way this director tells this story does not align with the way, with our habitual way to organize this information. So we don't get used to this reversed time order. So I guess that's the main reason why we found this movie really hard to understand, because we need to put extra effort to figure out the correct time order. Okay, so we just discussed the first rule we follow when we organize information. Let's talk about the second one. So tell me what you see in this part of the screen. Well, some of you may say 4 pairs of lines, but what if you see here? I would say probably 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 lines here, right? So they're actually the same thing, but depending on how these lines, where these lines are placed in this screen, we give them different descriptions, right? 4 pairs, 8 lines. So that is the second way we organize information by their physical location, or we call it proximate or physical closeness. That is, we tend to group the information that are physically close to each other. Let me give you another example. So let's say if I ask you to memorize as many countries as possible. So one strategy or one way to deal with this task is you want to group the countries together and then kind of memorize them. So you may want to first start with some European countries and kind of memorize all the countries located in this area of the world, and then move to the Africa part, and then move to the Asia part, and then North America and South America. So this way to memorize this information, memorize the countries, actually reflects this rule, which is we tend to group or structure the information by where they are. We tend to group the information which is physically close with each other. Let's talk about the third one, which is similarity. That is, we tend to group information into categories of items that are similar with each other, share something similar. Here, let me show you some evidence. So here is a memory test. So if I ask you guys to take a look at these 16 words and try to memorize as many as possible. I think a better strategy is, well, first you may want to take a look and group them together depending on what they are. So you may notice that a cat, bird, fish, and dog, they are all animals. So you tend to group them together and memorize these 4 items. And do the same thing for this lemon, plum, apple. Okay? And then group them together. So this is a better and easier way for us to do this memory test. And again, this reflects the third rule we obey or we follow to structure the information. That is, we tend to group things which are similar with each other. Okay, so far we've discussed the 3 rules for us to organize this information. And second, we're gonna in next video we're gonna talk about a second way for us to organize the information, which is by schema.